Some officials were unhappy with Larry Barker after he exposed abuses in the use of state airplanes, and they had to stop using them. But you know what? They ought to get on their knees and give thanks for that story, because it may have saved their lives. Conditions on those planes are so unsafe that one pilot recently quit. Fasten your safety belt. Larry's about to take us on a bumpy ride.
We were directed on late Friday afternoon that we would no longer having an interview with you.
It's a government scandal they won't talk about. Air New Mexico, a state-owned airline for the exclusive use of the political elite. But a News 13 investigation finds Air New Mexico plagued with safety violations going back years. In 2005, one state official noted, quote, "The driving force in the Aviation Bureau seems to be one of making the schedule and disregarding safety and proper operating practices. It is truly a miracle that they have not had a serious accident."
Our 3-month investigation uncovered a laundry list of blunders and mishaps. There have been airborne mistakes, a lack of training, disregarded regulations, inadequate record keeping, unqualified pilots, and reckless maintenance failures.
For example, August 1st, 2005, pilots Mike Warren and John Maldonado flew officials across New Mexico in the state's Aero Commander. The pilots were later reprimanded for failing to abort when a, quote, potentially dangerous electrical problem was discovered mid-trip. By continuing to fly, a supervisor said the pilots, quote, put their lives and the lives of their passengers at risk. In 2005, the Aviation Bureau was criticized for a series of dangerous safety lapses. Example, a pilot risked a mid-air disaster by knowingly flying the Aero Commander with an unlocked baggage compartment. And then the state airline faced the possibility of tens of thousands of dollars in FAA fines for failing to perform required checks of navigational equipment. And pilots recklessly flew passengers in violation of federal regulations by flying aircraft with inoperative equipment. In 2006, a pilot in command of the state jet was reprimanded following a series of mid-air safety blunders, including an unstabilized landing approach and the inadvertent disconnect of the autopilot. In a 2006 memo, the airline's then chief pilot was cited for, quote, bizarre and inappropriate behavior. Among the findings, unfamiliarity with an aircraft flight computer, landing technique, and airport procedures. The list goes on and on.
Aviation is one place you can't cut corners in safety.
Mike Cox is a retired Delta Airlines captain and a safety expert at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. He reviewed the documentation we uncovered.
On the memos that you read, are some of those issues troubling to you?
Well, they're beyond troubling. If I were, say, one of the passengers, state official who was flying in those aircraft, I would be very concerned about the qualifications and the continued safety of the agency who is operating those aircraft.
Has the state of New Mexico been operating its aircraft in a safe manner?
No. At times, it was to the point where I was concerned about an accident actually happening.
The state's dismal airline record came to a head in September when this pilot resigned over New Mexico's failure to address safety issues. We obscured his identity at his request. Among the concerns, unqualified pilots.
They have used their mechanic as a second-in-command on the aircraft. In fact, they used him when he was a private pilot in very low time.
Was he qualified to be a second-in-command on a state aircraft?
He was not.
If he was operating as second-in-command, he was in violation. If he was an observer, if this aircraft only required one pilot, he could sit there all day long. But if he's operating as second-in-command, he's in violation.
And during cold winter conditions, state pilots have been known to recklessly cut corners.
In a couple cases, instead of de-icing the aircraft, they'll leave it in the hangar, load passengers up, pull it out, and try to get off the runway before they get ice on the aircraft. Trying to get to the runway before ice builds without de-icing fluid on the aircraft is an accident waiting to happen.
And the state has done that.
They have.
It's not only a violation of federal code, but it's a safety hazard. The aircraft could be unairworthy. The safety risk that you're personally taking is enormous.
I know of cases where the radar was inoperative and they flew the aircraft in instrument conditions.
And that is a problem?
Absolutely. You're flying blind in weather without a radar.
Prior to every flight, pilots are required to calculate aircraft weight and balance. Here it may be required, but it's not routine.
The pilots do not perform weight and balances for almost every flight. And in not doing so, they don't know for sure that that aircraft is in a condition to fly.
If you were just throwing cargo and passengers on an aircraft without taking it into any consideration, the weight and balance issues, you could easily find yourself in a situation where the aircraft couldn't become airborne.
And then there's October 17th, 2008. The governor was scheduled to fly in the state jet to Carlsbad, Las Cruces, and Alamogordo.
However, the governor's flight conflicted with a policy requiring a minimum rest period for one of the pilots. Aviation officials ordered the pilot to fly the governor anyway.
In a handwritten note obtained by News 13, a state aviation official noted, quote, "The governor's needs supersede any internal procedures at this time."
To meet his needs, we had to deviate from our standards.
When it comes to safety, does the CEO or the governor or any other chief executive take precedence over regulations?
No, absolutely not. That's why regulations are there, to prevent abuse and to ensure that no matter who is a passenger or flying aboard that aircraft, that those regulations are adhered to.
James Chavez oversees the state airplane fleet.
Do you know if any official here at GSD ever directed pilots to deviate from the GOM to accommodate the needs of the governor? Did you direct that?
I think what we need to do is we need to put that request in writing, sir, so we can respond.
I'm asking you point blank. You and I are right here.
I know, but I'm also telling you that this is what I've been directed to do, sir.
You're not going to answer that question?
No, no comment.
That's not the only question the state won't answer. In fact, they won't talk safety at all. At the last minute, Cabinet Secretary Art Jaramillo pulled the plug on our scheduled interview with Aviation Bureau Chief John Maldonado.
Are you going to do an interview at all?
No.
Why not?
We're not going to do any sort of...
I'm asking why not?
There's no comment.
You're the bureau chief, aren't you, John?
Yes, sir.
So why won't you sit down and talk to us about safety issues relating to the state airline?
There are no safety issues. Aviation Services has a clean record, and the only thing we're dealing with in the past are personnel issues.
Oh, that's great. There are no safety issues? No safety issues? Then why don't you sit down and just talk to me about it?
The primary importance is the safety of your passengers. The safe passage of the people who have entrusted their lives to you. It's critical. And I don't care if it's the governor, if it's a senator, if it's a minor state official. If that person has to be somewhere and is going to use the state aircraft, they need to be transported in a safe manner.
Larry Barker, KRQE News 13.
And you know, it's not just the governor and state officials who fly in those state airplanes. The aircraft fleet is also used frequently to transport sick children.
Well,